Um, so think about this for a second. What if I told you that, well, the house you're sitting in right now,
Mm-hmm.
the one you've been diligently paying the mortgage on every single month, maybe even making extra payments on.
Right, the classic American dream.
Right. What if I told you that it isn't actually building your wealth?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In fact, according to the blueprint used by early retirees, that house is actively keeping you from retiring. Like it's draining your resources.
I mean, that is a tough pill to swallow for anyone who was, raised on that standard American dream.
Yeah, completely.
We're taught from day one that your primary residence is your ultimate financial fortress.
Exactly. It fundamentally breaks the rules we were all taught. But that's exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a very specific blueprint for financial freedom. And this draws really heavily from the frameworks of Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yeah, the rich dad, poor dad guy.
Yeah, but specifically his concepts in Retire Young, Retire Rich. So the mission today is to basically decode how early retirees actually think, the strict mathematical rules they use to define what they buy, and how they kind of manipulate the traditional financial system to buy back decades of their own time.
Right. But before we dissect that blueprint, we should probably establish the parameters of this conversation.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Go for it.
Yeah, so just a quick note that this deep dive is for informational purposes only. Investing, especially when we get into the strategies we're going to discuss today, it involves serious risk.
Yeah, real risk.
Right, including the loss of principal. So listeners really need to consider their own unique circumstances and, consult a qualified financial advisor before applying any of these concepts.
Absolutely. Because, the concepts here require a total rewiring of how you operate.
Oh, completely.
So let's start at the absolute foundation. Okay, let's unpack this. You cannot build wealth if you are functionally illiterate in the language of money.
Yeah.
And the framework we're looking at here, it argues that early retirees are obsessed with financial education, but not in the way you might think.
Yeah, not the traditional way.
Exactly. It isn't about getting an MBA. It's about understanding the mechanical levers of finance.
Mm-hmm.
Things like cash flow, tax-advantaged accounts, compounding interest.
Well, what's fascinating here is that Kiyosaki takes a massive swing at the traditional education system here.
Oh, he really does.
Yeah. The central thesis is that traditional schooling is an industrial era relic. Like, it's designed to mass produce reliable employees, not independent investors.
Right.
Think about it. You go to school, you learn to follow a bell,
Yeah.
you learn to do a specialized task for a boss, and you earn a paycheck.
Just following the rules.
Exactly. The curriculum is entirely centered on exchanging your labor for a wage. You don't go to traditional school to learn the tax code or, how to shelter assets.
Right, that's the blind spot. And early retirees, they recognize that the system is not going to teach them how to escape the system.
Right.
So they hack it. And they don't do it by, dropping $50,000 on some elite weekend mastermind retreat in Vegas or whatever.
No, not at all.
They use free or incredibly cheap resources. We're talking library cards, highly technical financial blogs, deep dive audio content.
They're essentially teaching themselves a foreign language.
Yeah.
Like, to use a concrete example from the framework, they understand the architecture of an IRA, an individual retirement account, better than most people understand their own car.
That's so true.
They don't just know it's a place to put money. They understand the mechanics of tax-deferred growth. They know that by shielding their investments from the drag of annual capital gains taxes, their wealth compounds exponentially faster.
Right.
So it's deliberate, it's focused, and it's self-directed education.
Yeah. I look at it like relocating to a new country.
Okay, how so?
Well, if you want to live in the land of early retirement, you cannot walk around speaking the language of a W-2 employee. If you're talking about hourly wages and overtime, you're speaking the wrong dialect. You have to speak the language of capital allocation.
Yes, exactly.
But, and here's the friction point, I can read all the books.
Right.
I can learn the vocabulary of compounding interest and tax shelters. But if my underlying psychology doesn't shift, I am never going to actually execute.
And that transition from vocabulary to execution, that is where most people get entirely stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding the math is the easy part. The framework emphasizes that true financial education requires a massive amount of unlearning.
Unlearning.
Yeah, you have to dismantle what Kiyosaki defines as poor and middle class beliefs.
Which brings us to habit 2, right? The psychological shift. And the biggest barrier here is the ingrained morality of hard work.
Oh, yeah.
We were so deeply conditioned to believe that we must physically or mentally grind for every single dollar we earn.
It is a profound identity shift, moving from I must work for money to I must construct systems where my money works for me.
It triggers intense anxiety for people
Well, sure.
because society tells us that security is a steady, biweekly paycheck from a reputable corporation. Stepping off that path feels reckless.
Okay, but I want to push back on the emotional side of this, though.
Okay, go for it.
How realistic is it to just casually drop decades of conditioning?
It's hard.
Because there are plenty of career-driven professionals who genuinely enjoy their jobs.
Sure.
They derive deep satisfaction and personal meaning from their careers.
Yeah.
We tie so much of our moral worth to the concept of grinding it out, of being a hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you suddenly stop feeling guilty about stepping away and letting an investment portfolio do the heavy lifting?
Yeah.
It feels almost, well, entirely counter to the Protestant work ethic.
Right, but that guilt is the exact mechanism that keeps the middle class trapped, according to this philosophy.
Really?
Yeah, it's not just the fear of losing money in an investment, it is the fear of losing your societal identity as a productive citizen.
Wow, yeah.
But the paradigm shift requires redefining what work actually means. Okay. Grinding out 50 hours a week at a desk is one type of effort, but aggressively analyzing market trends, sourcing undervalued assets, maintaining the discipline to save 50% of your income, and managing risk.
Right.
That is incredibly demanding work.
Oh, I see. So it's not about being lazy.
No, not at all.
It's about shifting your effort from active labor to structural engineering.
Yeah.
You're building the aqueduct instead of carrying the buckets of water.
Precisely. Once you realize that your capital can act as a tireless fleet of employees working 24/7 without needing a coffee break,
That's a great way to put it.
the guilt begins to evaporate. You start to see the strategic inefficiency of trading your limited biological time for dollars compared to deploying capital that has no physical limits.
Okay, so let's say I beat the guilt.
Yeah.
I have the vocabulary, I have dismantled my middle-class mindset, and I am ready to deploy my capital.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know the rules of the game. Where does the money actually go?
Mm.
Because traditional advice says I should max out my 401k and aggressively pay down the mortgage on my house.
Right.
But Kiyosaki's framework draws a brutal, uncompromising line in the sand about what you're allowed to buy, which is habit 3.
It is a ruthlessly simple metric, but it upends traditional accounting completely.
Yeah.
The rule is this: an asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket.
That's it.
That is the entire equation. Traditional accountants will look at your balance sheet, they'll see a car or a house, and list them under the asset column because they hold market value.
Right, exactly.
This framework rejects that completely. Market value doesn't matter if it isn't producing cash.
And here's where it gets really interesting because we're circling back to the hook from the beginning.
Yes.
The most shocking application of this rule is the primary residence. Under this blueprint, the house I live in, the one I am paying a mortgage on, is classified as a liability.
Because every single month, cash is leaving your bank account to sustain it.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Because traditional financial planners would scream at this. What about equity? Every time I make a mortgage payment, I am paying down the principal.
Right.
The house is historically appreciating in value.
Mm-hmm.
In 30 years, I will own a massive asset, free and clear. So how is that a liability?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the illusion of phantom wealth versus liquid cash flow.
Phantom wealth.
Yeah. Yes, you are building equity on paper, but you cannot buy groceries with home equity unless you take out a loan against it.
Which introduces more debt.
Exactly. Or you sell the house, which means you no longer have a place to live.
Right.
Meanwhile, what is happening in reality, you are paying property taxes. You are paying for the leaky roof.
Oh, the leaky roof.
You're paying interest to the bank. You're paying for maintenance. Every single month, the physical structure you live in demands cash from your reserves. It is a drain on your cash velocity.
So under this specific definition, an asset must actively generate income right now without requiring you to liquidate it.
Correct. Early retirees who follow this model are obsessed with protecting their cash flow. They ruthlessly minimize liabilities that don't offer long-term cash generation.
Okay.
They want appreciating assets like dividend-paying stocks, automated businesses, or rental properties that deposit funds into their checking account on the first of the month, regardless of whether they get out of bed.
Which brings up the most crucial mechanical question, right?
Mm-hmm.
If my house is a liability and I need assets that throw off reliable cash, what is the ultimate vehicle to achieve this?
Right, habit 4.
Yeah, because you can build a business, but that is notoriously risky and labor-intensive.
All right.
You can buy dividend stocks, but building a meaningful income stream there requires massive upfront capital.
Right.
But the blueprint points to one overwhelming favorite for the early retirement crowd, which is real estate investing,
Yes.
but specifically leveraged real estate.
Robert Kiyosaki is arguably the most vocal proponent of this specific asset class. And when you look at the mechanics, it becomes very clear why early retirees use it to accelerate their timelines.
Yeah, the math is crazy.
Real estate offers a unique mathematical convergence of forces. First, you have the rental income, which satisfies the primary rule. It puts positive cash flow into your pocket every month after expenses are paid.
But the real magic trick is the leverage.
Absolutely.
I think this concept gets tossed around a lot without people actually understanding the math behind it.
No, they don't.
Leverage is just a fancy word for using borrowed capital, other people's money, usually at banks, to amplify your own potential return. Let's break down the actual math of how this accelerates wealth compared to just saving.
Let's run a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you have $100,000 in cash.
Right.
You could buy a $100,000 property outright. If that property appreciates in value by 10% over a year, it is now worth $110,000.
Simple enough.
You made a $10,000 profit. That is a solid 10% return on your initial investment.
10% is great. I mean, the stock market averages around that historically. But an early retiree isn't going to tie up $100,000 in debt equity, right?
Exactly. Instead of buying one property in cash, they use leverage. They take that same $100,000 and put $20,000 down on 5 different $100,000 properties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The bank finances the remaining $80,000 for each property. You now control $500,000 worth of real estate using the exact same $100,000 of your own cash.
Okay, let's play out the appreciation on that.
If the market goes up that same 10%, your $500,000 portfolio is now worth $550,000.
Wait, so
You just made $50,000 in profit.
on the exact same initial $100,000 investment.
Right. Instead of a 10% return, you just achieved a 50% return on your actual cash invested.
That is wild.
That mathematical amplification is how these individuals compress a 40-year working career into a decade. And that doesn't even factor in the reality that your tenants are the ones paying down the mortgage debt for you every month.
It's staggering when you lay out the numbers like that.
It is.
But obviously, leverage cuts both ways.
Oh, for sure.
If the market drops 10%, your losses are equally amplified. You still owe the bank that debt.
Yes.
And that is where the financial education from the beginning of our discussion comes in.
Right.
They aren't just gambling. They are buying undervalued properties in stable markets with guaranteed cash flow to buffer against market dips.
The cash flow is the defensive mode.
Right.
If the property value dips, but the rent still covers the mortgage, the taxes, and the maintenance, you simply hold the asset and wait for the market to recover. You are insulated from the panic of paper losses.
I love the way this reframes what property actually is. Like, it's not shelter, it's a mechanism. The text mentioned this relatively low day-to-day effort once it's set up.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about it like a house, I think of it like an orchard.
An orchard. I like that.
Yeah, when you buy an undervalued property and stabilize it, you are planting an orchard. Yes, there is upkeep. You have to prune the trees, which is property maintenance, and you have to pay the water bill, which is taxes.
Right, right.
But as long as the yield of the apples you harvest and sell outweighs those costs, that orchard feeds you indefinitely. You planted it once, and it sustains you. It completely decouples your survival from a biweekly paycheck.
That decoupling is the operational core of early retirement. They view real estate strictly as a utility. It is a strategic mechanism designed for one purpose: to replace earned, highly taxed W-2 income with passive, tax-advantaged asset income.
But, and we have to be entirely honest here, building that orchard is brutal.
Oh, it is not easy.
Studying the tax code, analyzing markets, managing contractors, dealing with the inevitable tenant emergencies, and doing all of this while simultaneously fighting the societal pressure to just be a normal, compliant employee.
Yeah.
That requires an unbelievable amount of energy. The tactical blueprint is mathematically sound, but maintaining the discipline to execute it over 5 or 10 years requires serious psychological fuel.
And the framework is pragmatic about this reality, which brings us to habit 5.
Staying motivated.
Right. The math is simple. The execution is exhausting. Anyone can get excited and buy one rental property.
Sure.
But persisting through market downturns, unexpected capital expenditures, and the sheer fatigue of delayed gratification requires a foundational why.
So what does this all mean? Without that why, the moment the boiler breaks in your rental property at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, you were going to sell the house and go back to just relying on your salary.
Exactly. The ultimate motivation for early retirees, the fuel that keeps the engine running, is rarely the money itself.
Really?
Capital is just a metric. The true objective is buying back their own time. They are acutely aware that time is the only truly finite resource.
Huh? Nice.
Every tactical decision, every deferred purchase, every liability avoided is measured against how much future freedom it buys.
It is the emotional anchor.
Yeah.
Like when you are tempted to violate the rules,
Right.
say you get a bonus at work and you want to finance a brand new $80,000 luxury car,
Which we now know is a massive liability.
dragging cash out of your pocket.
Exactly.
Your why steps in.
Yeah.
You look at that car and you realize you aren't paying for it with money. You're paying for it with 3 extra years of sitting in a cubicle.
It creates a filter for every financial decision.
Wow, yeah.
Is this purchase extending my mandatory working years, or is this investment accelerating my exit?
Right.
The goal is peace of mind, autonomy over their daily schedule, and the ability to spend time with family without the looming threat of Monday morning.
So stepping back and looking at the entire architecture we've explored today, it really is a holistic ecosystem. It starts with the absolute basics of acquiring financial literacy, using free resources to learn the vocabulary of compounding and tax strategy.
Right.
Then it requires the painful psychological surgery of removing middle-class guilt and redefining what hard work actually means.
And from there, it moves into strict operational rules, classifying assets entirely by cash flow and rejecting the myth of the primary residence as a wealth builder.
Which leads directly into the vehicle of choice, utilizing the mathematical leverage of real estate to amplify returns and decouple income from labor.
Yes.
And finally, sustaining that entire machine with a deep, uncompromising personal motivation to reclaim your time. It makes that daydream of escaping the expense reports seem far less like a lottery ticket and much more like an engineering problem.
It is a solvable equation if you follow the rules.
Yeah.
But, this raises an important question, and it's a deeper, almost existential consequence of actually solving that equation.
Okay, what's that?
We spend our entire lives letting our careers define us. When you meet someone at a party, the first question is always, what do you do?
Oh, every single time.
Right. So if traditional schooling and society tie our entire self-worth to our labor, who do you become when the machine is finally built? When the real estate orchard is producing enough cash that you never have to work again and the financial struggle is over, how do you redefine your identity and find purpose when there is no boss, no schedule, and no 9 to 5 to tell you who you are?
That is the ultimate hidden challenge, isn't it? Escaping the grind is the dream we all focus on, but figuring out who you are when the noise finally stops, that might be the hardest work of all.